No.
So welcome to our Sunday night live show. For those that don't know, she's Cheryl.
He's Ken.
She's Cheryl. Anyway, it's nice to have everybody with us tonight. We're going to have an interesting conversation, we think, because we're going to talk tonight about planning for travel when you travel with needs of some kind. There's so many questions and so many things to think about, so we're going to try to start working our way through it. This will be a multi-part series. I'm not sure how many parts yet, but it will be a multi-part series. So first of all, do us a favor and let us know where you're watching from. So just put it in the comments so we know.
We are watching from our home office in Central Florida, where we hope to get some rain this week. We're in the dry season.
Yeah, it's been really dry here. And just in the way of news, Cheryl and I celebrated our 44th anniversary on Friday. So we are old-time married people.
People ask us why. How did you stay married so long? We both admit neither one wants to train anybody else.
Yeah, we're way too lazy for starting over. Okay, so Pam's with us in Nova Scotia. And as usual, Rhonda's in from Lakeside. And night. And we've got Barry in from Connecticut.
Hi, Barry.
And thank you for the happy anniversary.
Hi, Rhonda. Thank you for congratulations. Yeah, it's quite a feat these days.
Yeah, so we appreciate all that. And to get started with, as always, if you've got questions or comments, put them in. And I'm going to ask questions of you guys tonight. So I appreciate the interaction. Because when we think about it, we're going to start, if we're going to plan a trip, where we start is we look around our house and think about what are the things that we need and the things that we use at home. And sometimes those are different. So Cheryl, for example, what are some of the things that you use around the house?
I have a specially raised toilet seat. The whole toilet was raised up 4 inches on a plastic platform they sell for that purpose. And then I have arms, I have a piece of an old commode chair, but it's just the railing around the toilet that works. I've kind of pieced mine together for what works for me, being tall. And then I have a walker for the house. And then at home, of course, I have a wheelchair, and I have canes, and I have scooters. So I have everything. So
a zine, which she's sitting on, by the way.
Zine, my walker wheelchair zine. And then I have other things, other handy things like reachers, grabbers, however you want to call it. I have like a dressing stick. So if I'm gone for a really long time, there's certain things that I would need to take with me more than if I'm just going for a short trip. So the length of the trip affects how many things you need to take with you. For some things I only use weekly, some I use monthly. So then I have to take that into consideration.
Yeah. And so, that's the first thing. And think about in your house, for example, bed height. For some people, bed height is really critical. Some people, not so much. What about, on your bed? What do you have on your side of the bed?
Oh, yeah. See, I do much better on a soft bed. So I have like a 2-inch foam riser on my side, and Ken doesn't. So then when we travel, of course, we're sharing one. And so one of us is it's rarely, occasionally, in the better hotels, we find we're more comfortable because it's more medium. Sometimes in a real inexpensive hotel, you're going to find either something that's hard as a rock or something that's really worn out and too lumpy and soft. So you get used to certain things, and then when you travel, it's not going to be the same. So some things, if you really, really have to have that, you might need to have a thin 1 inch when you roll up, or an air bed, something, each one has to suit for themselves what they can live with and what they can't live with for a week.
Yeah, Pam said she needed a teaching stick and can't find a good one. Now, when Cheryl's trying to teach me something, she just gets a 2 before, and that usually works. I don't. You might think about that.
I think she's meaning for the dressing stick. I find a lot of my stuff on Amazon anymore, and I've had my dressing sticks. I've had several in there. One even cracked in half, and I still have it for like when I need a short one. So,
yeah, and again, so that is part of it, because some of the things that you use at the home may not travel easily. So for Cheryl, having the commode, or the frame of an old commode, it was like a bedside commode, which she uses for rails to get up. But the real piece that she needs is rails beside the toilet. So again, you want to think through all of the things just as you go through your house, look around and think about, okay, what is it that I use every day?
And so sometimes you can use your walker, wheelchair, or your Zine. Zine even has a video about how to use it to get off a toilet if you can lean really far forward, which I can't really do that well sometimes. So I can't bend my hips that well. But so that sometimes you have to experiment and see what's going to work when you don't have the things you have at home.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us to, if I could find it here, leads us to the next question is, of the things that you need and use at home, what are the things that you absolutely need to travel comfortably and safely? And again, we start to think about this when if we're booking a room, if we're booking like a cabin on a cruise ship, if we're booking a hotel, a VRBO, you have all of these things, all of these options, let's say,
or a train trip,
and so example for Cheryl and I, we typically will book. They have an accessible cabin and we're okay with it. It's a little tight with all of our stuff in there. If it's a shorter trip, we can do, setting up, but obviously we have to book the accessible car, so they have an accessible restroom. And we'll talk a little more about that as we get later into today's discussion. But so you think about, what is it that I have to be able to take with me? If you're flying, it kind of breaks down into two things. What are the things that I want to pack? And then what are the things that I need in the airport, so that we can get around and be comfortable? But you want to start, and what I'm going to encourage everybody to do, and I'll give you a link to it. There is at Wheel the World, they have a travel profile that you can fill out, so that you have you can specify what you need for them. But what I would suggest is go through the process, fill it out, and I'll put a link in the description for the YouTube video. I'll put that link in there. I don't have it. I didn't do it ahead of time. But you think about it from this perspective, if you go through that and you fill out somebody else's questionnaire, they may give you a list of things that you had not thought about. But it is really important to have all of this information collected together, so that when you start to deal with hotels or cruise lines, you have answers to the question.
And then, like, for us, one thing before I forget it, I keep forgetting to say it, is who are you traveling with? Can a companion help you? Like, a lot of the things I can do without if Ken is going to be there with me a lot. Like, I can do without the railings if he's there to help lift me. But if you're by yourself, then you really need certain things, and you really you really need to know what you need and what all the help you're going to have. And then you can do your planning better. And sometimes you have to think about, what do I really want to take, and what do I really need to take, and what can I substitute for what I usually use? Is there a lighter weight, like an inflatable thing instead of a full foam thing? Lots of things like that.
And that just brought to mind, the light popped on. So what did you just buy recently?
Oh, yes, because I have to lay back between long flights. I really need to, or even just between flights, I really need to lay back. I just can't sit for 6 or 8 hours still. My back won't take it. So usually I take my reclining wheelchair, which is perfect. I can lay back whenever I need to in the airport. But now on some trips, we really want to take a scooter. well, I can't take a wheelchair and a scooter. It's just getting too much. I'd rather not, So I bought an inflatable bed, a single, like inflatable bed that you can pump up in. I did it myself in about 3 minutes. And it's real simple. It's extremely lightweight and small. I compared them online. I should put it on our blog.
Yeah, we'll put it on the blog
or our webpage, because I really read, about 15, 20, 30 models. I mean, I just looked and looked and looked, and this one is the smallest, and it is as small as it said. It's as lightweight as it says. It's just enough comfort that I'll be able to lay down on my back if I can just find a corner in an airport out of the way and just lay down. If I'm by a chair, I can then pull myself up from there. And that way it fits in my purse. It's like, it takes about the size of a small folded umbrella. And so I can take that with me. And then we don't need the wheelchair. I have options of scooter or whatever else I want to take with me, or my Zine, whatever.
Okay, we got a comment here. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I've never seen one.
Rhonda, that is a really good idea.
Ken wants one of those. You have to send him the link.
Yeah, I'll look for that. But that again, that's the kind of thing that we think about is, okay, what is it that we've got to have, and then let's go to there. In this, I thought I fixed the want-in. I have a want-in room. That's supposed to be another language. Watina. But sorry, I just can't resist. But so you think about, and a good example, and this is a big issue for a lot of people, is bed height. So for people that travel in a wheelchair that have very limited mobility, you can't deal, or some of them can't deal with really tall mattresses. And it seems like the better the room you get, the taller the mattress is. Pretty sure that pretty soon I'm going to have a step ladder to get in bed. But
I like it though.
Yeah. For Cheryl, it's easy because she's got very long legs. I don't have very long legs. I have shorter legs. So, but for me, it's not a big deal. But for people that are trying to transfer from a wheelchair to a bed that's, a foot above their wheelchair height, then it becomes an issue. And let's go back to things you need at home. So some people need a Hoyer lift and have a Hoyer lift at home. So the question is, can you travel without a Hoyer lift, or do you need to make arrangements to have a Hoyer lift available wherever you go? Because in many places, I won't say most, but in a lot of places in the U.S., it's probably doable to get a Hoyer lift for a rental. Some places it's more challenging. But then the other piece of it is, if you travel with and need a Hoyer lift, one of the things that we see often in hotels that we look at is under the bed, rather than having a frame that's up off the floor, they have a box sitting on the floor. If you need a Hoyer lift, a room with a box on the floor doesn't work because you can't get under the bed.
And then I've learned with all the traveling I've done, I've learned to adjust and to look for ways to adjust in the room, because sometimes I get in a room, especially the older cruise ships, they have just really low beds, and that's really hard for me to get up. I mean, the bed is sometimes only halfway up my calf, and when you've got stiff hips and stiff knees, how are you supposed to do? So I usually I sit up on the side of the bed, and then I have to scoot all the way up to the end of the bed where there's an end table. And I've actually scooted myself onto the end table, like lifted myself up like 2 inches to get on, kind of drag myself up to the end table, get on the end table, then where I can get my hands on both sides on the end table and push up, then get up. And it's a real hassle, but it's something that I can do. So sometimes when the room doesn't work for you, you have to find a way. And sometimes it takes me a day or two. I'm having Ken lift me, but then he starts hurting. So I've learned to, there's just, you have to learn what think about ahead of time. What if this, what if that?
So, and Pam's an example. She travels with her airbed, and that's a good example, is, of being able to figure out how to accommodate your needs. But that now becomes one of those things that she has to take with her. And then that brings some other challenges, because I know trying to get one deflated and packed especially if you're traveling from one place to another. And we'll talk about it as we go into, probably starting in next week as we start looking at, actually planning trips. But for Rhonda said too high a bed is difficult for semi-ambulatory. Yep, getting in and out into it. And so again, these are things, because once you have the answers to the things that you need, then when you start to book rooms and make phone calls, you know what it is that you have to have. So then the next piece of it, after we've done that assessment, becomes the part of what is it we like to do? How do we like to travel? And it's interesting because in the people we talk to and visit with, and we run into people that are in wheelchairs and maybe paraplegic, have CP, a variety of different things, but some of them do some amazing things that you wouldn't expect, like jump out of airplanes, go for helicopter rides. So this piece of it is what are, how, if you're planning a specific trip, then how are you going to travel and what is it you need to do? So for example, if we're planning a land vacation where we're driving a car, what we pack is much different because we can take so much more. So then we'll probably take at the least Cheryl's zine and the Will C2. That's the most likely travel combination. If we know we're going somewhere it's easy and flat and she's not going to have to travel long distances, we might just take the wheelchair because she can substitute the wheelchair for the zine and the C2, or she could just take the zine maybe. So you start to think through that process about, okay, where do we want to go? And, how are we going to get there? I was chatting with somebody in the group today about a train. There's a comment up there. So for Amtrak, a wheelchair or a scooter, either one.
Oh yeah, they had slider boards after my back surgery. That was wonderful thing to use. And they had some nice small ones, slim ones for traveling. That would be great. Like even if you just, that would make it a lot easier. Yep. I should probably get one for my seats in my car. You can slide in and out. Sometimes it's really hard to get in and out of cars. And when you travel, maybe like a small miniature slider board to get in and out, help you slide in and out of taxis might not be a bad idea. My mother-in-law used to use, she had like a, I'm trying to think of what it was. It's just a slick piece of fabric that she used. And I can't remember what it was from. It wasn't intended for that. It wasn't just fabric. I can't remember what, but she found that worked for her to get in and out of a van or car because it would slide. She could like turn easily in it. So, look for what works for you and then find miniatures of them.
Yeah. So if, for example, like I said, we're going back to, we're taking a train trip. It's pretty easy. Again, the scooter works or the wheelchair works. If we've got a room, the scooter is going to work really well. Assuming we can find a place to park it in the room, that'd be the challenge. I haven't tried that. We'll have to make that
on a train.
Yeah,
try that. You'd have to have a collapsible wheelchair on the train.
Yeah, so we'll do an Amtrak venture. We talked about doing Amtrak down to Miami one of these days, so we'll try that. But so again, it depends. If you're flying for Cheryl and I, the C2 works because they can gate check it. Like I said, for Cheryl, it's not as comfortable when we get if we have a layover, it's not as comfortable during the layover. But when we have to deal with hills and cobblestones and so many other things, it is so much better than her manual wheelchair, especially on me. It's just so much easier. So you think about, again, go back and you think about it. What is it that, we had another comment. Okay. What is a shop rider dash, Linda? I don't know. So explain that if you would.
Is that like a small wheelchair?
Yeah, I don't know. But again, the thing about it's just about putting the pieces together so that we know when we leave what we've got to have ready. And I'll share a checklist with you. It's available on the website, and I'll put a packing piece to go with it. Because right now I have a checklist. It's all the things you need to do, but it doesn't include the packing. So we'll work on creating that. Somebody, in fact, asked me about that in a message. Oh, so Linda's got a small folding scooter.
Oh, is there a picture of it? Or no, is that her picture?
No, but I think that's her avatar.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Looking at the avatar makes me wonder, are you a little squirrely? But
And and then I have, like, if you're really tall like I am, a lot of the small scooters, I can't hardly get my legs to stay on them. My legs are gonna like be past them. I need like skis on the front to put my feet on. So
Yeah.
that's why it's interesting how the more I talk to people who have difficulties getting around, I find the more equipment they have. Like the longer you have it, the more equipment you have. It doesn't seem like there's that one piece of equipment does it, especially if you're semi-ambulatory. Then you just end up with lots of equipment, but it makes your life better.
Yeah, being able to travel is such a privilege and a blessing. And we, Cheryl and I were gone a lot. So you think about that. So, and then the next piece of it, and this is kind of an interesting question, is what kind of trip and activities are you looking for? Because most of us, when we travel with other people. And so, and then that's why I do content that I do about things that may not be accessible. Because if you're going and your partner your person you're traveling with, your traveling companion, is fully able and is into all kinds of things, in most cases we want to try to balance out the activity so there's things for both of us that we enjoy. So you think about that, and as I mentioned earlier, there are people that do incredible things that are paraplegics. We did an interview, it's on the YouTube channel, about accessible scuba diving in Grenada. I found since then there's several other places that you can do accessible scuba diving.
We did an accessible zip line.
There's an accessible zip line. So you start to think about what are the things that I want to do, because that's a big factor in picking out the vacation that you're looking for. Is what do I want to do?
And then also when you do make your final decision, then where the zip lines are depends on how do you get to the zip line, and what am I going to need so once you find what you want to do, then you can start finding the specific places, and then you have to see what you need there. So you all through the whole trip, you have to say, what do I need at this stage of the trip? How much do I want to take with me? And then see what's going to work and what you can fit into your car or on the plane. And then, so it takes a while to plan a trip for those who have special needs.
Yeah. And I do, because of what we do for the YouTube channel as well, I spend hours researching destinations, and it's not easy. We're working on trying to help fix that. We're working a little bit with Wheel of the World, because they have information, and that's a good reference site. If nothing else, is go to their reference site and put in the places that you want to go. So I put in a couple of places recently, and what I found is they didn't have any accessible activities there, which told me, okay, there's a need for somebody to go in and find what's accessible, and I'll work with them to do that. But in other places, they'll have a list of a variety of different accessible activities. In cruise ports, they'll have accessible excursions, but not always. In fact, I had a conversation with them about places that we've been to find accessible excursions. So you start to have to think about the research to figure out where you're going to go. Oh, Pam's got her fold up. Yeah, it is. It was interesting. We had a chance to have a conversation with a design team from Japan that is working on a new model of a scooter. And they had asked Cheryl to come up and try it for fit and see how well it worked.
It was just a prototype, so the motor didn't work. I'm like, oh, that's the most fun part, see how fast it goes. But I did try sitting on it. It was very high up, which I'm very happy, because I'm not the tallest person I know. And I know if I have trouble with scooters, there's a lot of tall people out there that need those seats to go up a couple inches higher. And it moved. They did have someone push me about in it, and it steered very nicely, easily. I liked everything pretty much everything about it. Had room for a basket underneath. It was strong enough to put a backpack on the back. But I like anyway, we're not going to tell you any more secrets about it because it's a prototype and we weren't allowed to take photos. Let's just say it was a lot of fun to be in on that design. And so if you ever have any ideas for something like that, you let us know. That they ever get invited again, we'll tell them what people think.
Yeah, but and what I was starting to say with that was, since we travel with that Will C2, I have a backpack that most of the time has 2 laptops, a camera gear, and my one backpack weighs probably 40 or 45 pounds. Cheryl has a backpack that's not quite that heavy, and it may have, and if I only have one computer, she has the other, because we travel with 2. But you start thinking about, okay, now I've got this stuff, and a good example is Pam. She's got her fold-up bed. So you have these things that you have to be able to get from one place to the other. And so I encourage you to think about, okay, how can I get better at transporting it? So literally I have, if we had a long ways to go with luggage, I have a strap that I can put several suitcases together that I could connect to the C2, after we put the backpack on it, and Cheryl could be the engineer on a train. But again, these are the logistics that you have to think about. If you're traveling solo, it becomes so much more challenging because you don't necessarily have that extra pair of hands. And we'll talk about dealing with airports and some of the other pieces of it as we get into the class coming up. I call it a class, next week's show, because we're going to really start to dig into those pieces. But think about, and again, type of trip. Let's go back. The other thing that Cheryl and I love is cruising, and it's because so much of this, rather than you think about it, if you're going to take a vacation and visit 7 islands in 7 days, which is what we did out of Barbados. Okay, that's 7 unpacking, 7 packing, 7 flights, 7 transfers. You think about all of the logistics that are involved. And so that's one of the things I'd encourage you to think about is as you're starting to think about the planning process, what are the logistics that you're going to need?
So that's why we took a cruise to see those islands. Saw a cruise. One of us saw a cruise that would go to 7 islands. We're like, that's the way to go to 7 islands. And just pack once. And it was very enjoyable.
Yeah. And so again, we think about going back to the activities that we're going to do. Cheryl can scuba dive. Cheryl's not a fan of snorkeling nearly as much as she is of scuba, but she does snorkel. She does swim. So that means that if we're going to somewhere with its beach, we're both believers in having our own fins and mask and snorkel, because putting somebody else's snorkel in my mouth is not my favorite concept. I don't care what they've had it soaking in. So you think about, okay, so that's more luggage, more stuff to carry. We carry, again, depending on how long we're going to be gone and we're where we are, we may take a tripod and some,
that's right.
Some other pieces to go with us, because we start to have things that we want to have.
What is she referring to there?
I know exactly what she's referring to. She's saying, I can't ride the cars on your train.
Oh.
Well, I did think about, maybe a skateboard, and a little tow handle. I could pretend like I was wakeboarding.
I think he'd be happier at the end of the day if I towed him.
Sometimes when we went and toured at Sandals and Royal Curacao, I walked about 10 miles that day, and by the time I got back to the ship, I was done. Cheryl was full of energy and felt like doing stuff. And I'm like, okay, you walk, all right. No. So, now once you have this list, and we're going to work a lot more on this, is you've got to start finding the places that meet your needs. So if you're thinking about beach, okay, and we'll just use this for a minute. Okay, where can I find beaches that are accessible? And we start with Google and other things, start trying to find that. If you want a beach wheelchair, those are harder to come by. But in Miami, in Miami Beach, on the beach, they have free beach wheelchairs that are powered that are available. Now you still can't go in the water with them, but at least you can use them on the sand. So that's one of those things to think about. Or if you want to get in the water, then you have to have a place that has a beach wheelchair that's available to rent that will float. And again, it just starts to be the research piece of it, because you have to start. I start with the term accessible or wheelchair accessible, and then whatever I'm looking for.
We have quite a few different videos just about beach wheelchairs, and also like in Greece, those 23 places that have you take your wheelchair up to the side of this device and you scoot over into it. It's like a seat, and it rides you down into the water, and you have a thing around your wrist, and it's a button, and when you want to go back up, you pull it and it comes down into the water, and you swim over onto it and come back out of the water. So I mean, if you really want to do some swimming a lot, I'd recommend going there. If you're a solo and you really want to get in the beach, that's your way to go. And then at Barbados, we found the beach wheelchair you can rent to get into the water, but you have to make your reservation early. They only have one so far. I know they're looking at getting some more. And so yeah, it's once you find a place, it's a real gem to know that, and then you should take advantage of it.
Yeah, and so like I said, then it becomes just a lot of research. Now, Cheryl and I try to do as much as we can. We are limited to how many places we can go by budget and so many other things. And Pam says the cruise ship is good for her and her bed. Yeah, I like that point you made there too, that the hotels won't remove the bed. But if they will put it up to the side of the wall or remove it, that's a great thing.
Yeah, the cruise ships are pretty good. They even found out recently, like if they move the end table, sometimes they can move the end table so you can get your wheelchair in the room a little better too. You just have to ask them what they can do. Rhonda says she loves photography, but the rest of it's a pain to transfer all that stuff. Yeah, looking now for light but sturdier tripod for capturing the northern lights in October. Oh, how exciting! Presuming I can access the tender to get to the shore. I don't know if aren't the northern lights big enough? You might be able to not have to do all that. I don't know.
Well, there are some things. And Rhonda, if you're traveling a lot, I like my Insta360 camera. It comes with a little monopod that has a tripod base for it. And what I like about it is I can use it for 360 videos. I can also use it for 4K video, and I can create photographs, either panoramic photographs, or I can create, like basically a single flat photograph. So there are some things to do, but again, you start to think about that.
Yeah, and I have a small. He had got like a travel tripod, but then I got a smaller, lighter weight one. It turned out we only want to take he never wants to take his anymore. Like that extra 3 inches is just too much to get in a suitcase.
Yeah, and so those, but it goes back to this whole process of what is it I want to do, what's going to be important to me while I'm traveling, then how do I get it packed? Cheryl and I are a fan of the cruise for the reasons mentioned. Everybody, and the nice thing is, and what I'll say is, if you've got a good phone, Cheryl and I shoot a lot of video. We shoot most of our shorts are shot on phones. We shoot, we do a lot of photos with phones. My next upgrade will be a phone that has a better camera. And
yeah, my S22 has 5 cameras originally, although I've cracked 2 lenses. But it picks, if it has a cracked lens, it picks to the next one. So it's helped me a lot. But I need to get it fixed. But it takes amazing photos.
Yeah. And so, again, those are one of those things that you kind of look at ways, what can I combine? What can I simplify as well? And then, like I said, you find the places that have the things that you want and that are accessible. So what we're going to do starting next week is we're going to, since we've been talking for a while about the Hawaii cruise, Ron has already booked on it, and Cheryl and I are going to book. And so for those of you that are watching that would love to go with us, the plan is to take, and this again is an accommodation. So let's talk about that for a minute. Why are we cruising to Hawaii, Cheryl? Wouldn't it be quicker to fly?
Because I can't fly to Hawaii. I just cannot fly over 4 hours. If I do, I'm going to have I'm gonna have to be knocked out because after about 6 hours, or probably even 5.5, I mean, nobody's gonna want to even have me in the cabin. I'm gonna be miserable. I'm so uncomfortable. Even after 2 hours, I have to get up and start walking around, and they keep making planes smaller and tighter and smaller and tighter, and it's even more difficult to even be able to do that between the other people going back and forth to the restroom on long trips. So I told him I want to go to Hawaii, but we have to take the ship.
Well, and we're looking at that for England. We're planning a trip probably for 2024 to England. Well, I should say to England and Europe, because I'm sure we'll probably try to do as much as we can while we're over there. But we're looking at flying to Iceland because that's a short flight from New York. So it'd be from here to New York to Iceland.
But New York, so then again, for us, that means a night stay every place, which means more packing or getting the laundry package on the cruise ship. That's the other thing.
Yeah. And when we get to Iceland, we'll stay a couple of days. Then we'll look at flying from there to London, and then spend some time in the UK because Cheryl really wants to go to.
I want to go to Ireland and Scotland.
Yeah.
They're so beautiful in the photos.
Yeah, we watched a series from Scotland, made us fall in love with Scotland. So we think, okay, so we could do that, and then we could travel by train or some other ways there. But in all of this, it is about thinking about what you want to do, what your goals are of the trip, and then what are the ways that you can make it work for you, because it's going to be different for every one of us. And the reason you want to get all of this done is so that when you get ready to talk to a travel agent, are you going to call the cruise line yourself? However you're going to plan your travel, you need to make sure that you have the things you need so that you can answer. One of the things I mentioned earlier, and I will include that on the checklist too, is the special needs form. Almost anywhere you go wants the height, weight of your scooter. Sometimes they want the power, the power capacity of the battery. They have all of these questions that you need answered. And unless you have a document where you can find it quickly and easy that has those answers, you do like I do a lot of the time, and you're on Google, Googling the specs. And some specs are not easily found, so then it becomes even more of a nuisance. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Sorry to hear about that, Rhonda. And
Yep, we have some that we need to decide what to do with. We haven't made a decision yet.
Yeah.
They didn't leave any instructions. We're figuring
Yes.
that out still.
And so
Yeah,
maybe
it's
you'll
not
be
till
ready,
next
Pam.
year. Yeah.
And think about it. That'd be Hawaii in the middle of Nova Scotia's winter. Might be a nice change.
I'd leave a couple days early. You never know what the weather's going to do with those flights up there in the northern half of the hemisphere there.
Well, and again, and next week we'll start talking about flying in. Why we always go a day or at least a day early. We may with one of the things, and this goes into the part of the planning process, is if since we're sailing out of San Diego, are there things that I want to see and do in San Diego? Because there might be, there might not. I don't know. And then we'll work through the trip. We'll look at what's the islands, the destinations we'll visit. We'll start to look a little bit of what to see and do there.
Oh, I love Hawaii. I've been to Kauai and it's beautiful.
She got to go to Kauai. I haven't been to Kauai.
Yeah, I went to Hawaii for 7 days with my son. Won a trip. That was fun. He was a small child.
Yes, Pam says she's going to Alaska. That's more important.
That Alaska is beautiful too.
Yeah,
and on the way to Hawaii, I'm sure we'll just see a lot of water quite a bit of the time.
Yeah, and that may change what you're going to take with you on your trip. See, all of these things come into play as you're starting to think through this planning process. Now, I love the planning process. In fact, I wear Cheryl out sometimes with the planning process.
And then also, of course, with traveling, they always say, well, Alaska, you want to layer. I have found traveling, you want layers anyway. The weather can change anywhere. And then you might, like in a hotel, sometimes hotels are freezing. Sometimes the air conditioner barely works. So layers are always the best way to go. And then you have to, so I usually wear several layers on the plane. Then if it gets too much, I put it up in the overhead. And that way, whatever the plane does, I'm comfortable and I already have some of my layers with me.
Yeah. So anyway, we will start talking. We'll work on Hawaii. We'll start with that process next Sunday. And thanks everybody for joining us. We had a good crowd here tonight, and I appreciate it. Pam says she likes to plan too.
Yes.
And organize. Yes.
And you know that they say actually that planning a trip is sometimes more fun than the trip itself, almost. But that's because if you planned it correctly, I think then the trip would be more fun, really.
Yeah. If you've done well, and you learn, and and I don't know how many times Cheryl and I've gone somewhere and said, "Oh, what about this or what about that?" And so it all becomes a piece of the trip planning process, so that when you get ready to go, you've got what you need, you've done all the things you need to do, and your trip goes smoothly out and back, and everything is good.
Yeah, I'm not a big planner. I just kind of want to say that's where I want to go, and then I kind of leave it up to Ken. And then later I'm like, oh, I should have had some more words in there.
She should have done more planning, but she didn't. So that's how she wound up on a tram going to a zip line. Okay, we'll see everybody next week. Thanks for joining us. It's been fun as always. I appreciate all the comments from the audience tonight. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.